Like a book, it all began in the library. On the last days of the summer vacation, Ellie, a high school student, sought refuge in the silence of the library early in the morning. While everyone else was on vacation, Ellie preferred to get lost among books. She wandered through the shelves looking for the most beautiful books. That day, she found a novel she had been wanting to read for a long time and settled into a corner, starting to read. After a while, someone else entered the library. When Ellie lifted her head for a moment, she noticed a handsome boy walking between the bookshelves. He was examining books and picking them out, and Ellie couldn't help but be drawn to him. He was so careful, though, that he moved around without making eye contact. A week later, Ellie visited the library at the same time. She was a little bored that day and had gotten lost in her search for a book when she heard a voice. The same boy was walking toward her. "I don't think I've seen this book before," he said with a smile. Ellie looked up, surprised, and he smiled back. "Oh yes, it's a very old book," Ellie replied. "I got it last week." There was a brief silence, but then Ellie smiled. That smile melted the ice between them. The boy introduced himself. "I'm Drew." Ellie introduced herself as well. That day, instead of talking about books, they spent a long time chatting about each other. Hours passed, and the library was about to close. Drew invited Ellie for a coffee. She hesitated, but finally agreed. Thus, their first meeting had begun. As time went on, Ellie and Drew got to know each other better. Books, literature, dreams. There was a connection in everything they shared. Drew gave Ellie a book by his favorite poet, and Ellie gave him a notebook with quotes from her favorite novel. Every meeting was a new discovery. One day, Drew said, "Let's write the real book of our lives together," and Ellie winked and smiled. One day, after meeting in the library again, Ellie asked, "Will you always come to the library to see me?" Drew smiled. "No, the library is just the beginning, but I want to be with you everywhere." A few weeks later, they started meeting outside the library too. One evening, they went to the seaside together. Drew held Ellie's hand and looked into her eyes, saying, "Life is more beautiful with you." But as time passed, the bond between them started to strain. They both had different dreams, following different paths, and these paths were pulling them in opposite directions. Drew wanted to travel the world, write novels, and discover new places, while Ellie's dreams were focused on her hometown, her education, and building a peaceful life. One evening, while sitting in the park, Drew's face became serious, and the soft expression that used to be there was replaced by a frown. "Ellie, I think we're going in different directions," he said quietly. Ellie's heart sank. She had known this would happen, but hearing it still shocked her. She tried to hold back her tears but couldn't. "I don't want to lose you," she whispered. "I don't want to lose you either," Drew said, his voice trembling. "But when our lives pull us apart, it's hard to imagine that everything will stay the same." That night, they parted ways. There were no promises left for the future, only the understanding that everything was over. Despite the love they had for each other, the distance between their dreams had overshadowed everything. In the following months, Ellie continued going to the library, but everything was different now. Books were no longer an escape. They were reminders of everything she had lost. Drew continued to travel, write, and live the life he had always dreamed of. Occasionally, Ellie would see him on social media, looking at photos from places he had been, smiling in places she had never visited. But each time, her pain grew a little more. They had shared a beautiful chapter together, but sometimes even the most beautiful stories don't end with a happy ending. The love they had once built slowly faded, and all that remained was a brief but beautiful memory.